Hey guys, what's up there? Welcome to Vaping 101 with the Monster Man, episode 1, which is understanding the different styles of vaping. So, starting from the most beginner friendly, so from beginner all the way up to expert or advanced, depending on how you see it. So starting from the bottom, you have your pod-based systems. Now, pod-based systems have two separate styles of their own. Now that can be a closed pod system or a all-in-one, an AIO. Whenever you walk into a shop and you see a pod system that says AIO with it, that means all-in-one. So a closed pod system would be something like the Juul. The pod itself already has the coil in it, already has juice in it. You cannot replace the coil or you cannot put your own juice in. That is basically what makes a closed pod system. You just pop it in, you're good to go. You can plug the pod in via USB to charge it, and you can, most of them have a pass-through ability, which means you can vape it while it's charging. Do I really recommend it? No, because you may run the risk of overheating the device itself, but it does have that option if you are in a bit of a bind. An all-in-one though, you can replace the coil and you can put your own juice in. Now me, the way that I view pods, when it comes to someone starting out, even though the closed pod systems are more convenient, they generally don't have, a lot of them don't generally hold a lot of liquid for somebody, and plus at the same time, the nicotine level of the liquid that's within the pods are generally too high in my opinion. You know, the Juuls have like, what, 50 milligram nic, and in my opinion that's way too high. So I usually go with an all-in-one. Now what are some examples of all-in-ones? Well, that's pretty simple actually. Now I do classify this pod system as a all-in-one, even though you can't replace the coil, you can put your own juice in, and that is the OVNS Duo pod system, which I did review quite some time ago. That pod is actually pretty good, and also it does give you the option to put two different flavors in one pod device, to where if you are vaping on one but you're sick of the flavor, or you can't taste it due to vapor's fatigue, that is where your taste buds get so used to the flavor it becomes muted. You can always flip the pod over and vape a different flavor that you put into the other pod. So it's basically two pods in one. That is what I say as an AIO. Now a true example of an AIO would be the Smoke Nord. Now those pods, they have, obviously you have your battery system, and you can replace the coil and you can put your own juice in. So that is a true definition of a AIO pod based system. So those are really the key differences between a closed pod system and an all-in-one. Now, from the next level up, we usually are more, so we're going a little more advanced here. You're going into more of the starter kit realm, which is basically a mod with a tank. When you go into a shop and you go online and you see starter kits, those generally have a mod with a accompanying tank for it. And a lot of these devices can be a single battery, they can be a dual battery, and I've seen some as a triple battery. So, what are some examples of starter kits? Well, you got the Vanny Vape Jackaroo, you got the UL Valerian 2 kit, you have the Wismec Tinker 300, you got the UL Crown 4 kit. You know, those are some really good examples of what a starter kit is. Usually the tank that comes with it is a sub-ohm tank, which does mean that the coil is below below 1 ohm. So those are your traditional starter kits, and some of the current ones still on the market. And a lot of them vary in how many batteries they take. Some take a single 21700 or 2700. Some take dual 18650 or triple 18650. Now, generally though, I've seen these starter kits, as far as the tanks that come with them, they generally want you to run them around 60 to 75 watts because most of the starter kits, the coils for the tanks are usually mesh coils, and you don't run a lot of power through those. So now we go into a little more on the advanced side, which is more so somewhat like starter kits, but more advanced. By that I mean more powerful mods. Now this one is a very good example. This is the iJoy Maxo 315. This is a quad 18650 box mod. This has a chip in it for 315 watts. This thing can fire down to a 0.06. So this is more advanced as far as power. Now really the only difference between a mod like this and a starter kit is generally the size, because starter kits normally try to stay pretty compact, more hand or pocket friendly, even though I do not recommend you put a mod in your pocket. That's just me though. But these are more for your drippers and RTA, something that can supply a lot of power for rebuildable to vape at a higher wattage, basically. Another prime example would be the Lacimo F4. That's a 360 watt device, also a quad 18650. You have the Wismec Rouleau series. You remember the RX200, RX200S, and the Gen 3. You have the Vupu X17, which is a dual 21700. You have, back in the older days, you had the Sigilli 150, 200, 213 Food Chai. There are plenty of there are an abundance of actual standalone box mods out there on the market, and some of them are can be either pretty compact like the RX Gen 3 or big and bulky like the Maxo. It all comes down to what you like. Next up this is now where we're starting to get into the more unregulated side of things. Now, taking the same box mod approach, there are unregulated box mods ranging from parallel to series. Now basically what parallel is that with all positives run up, and it or I shouldn't say evenly drains, but both positives, like you have a dual battery parallel mod, positive ends are both running up, and you're getting basically the voltage of a single battery. So in parallel, you can have a quad parallel mod, a 5 battery parallel mod, or like what some of the reviewers on YouTube here have done. They've gone even upwards of 10 battery parallel mods, but even though they have all those batteries, they're still only getting an output of 4.2 volts. But the benefits of parallel is, yes, you might be only limited to 4.2 volts max, but you're at the same time doubling the amperage that you are allowed to play with. So if you have a dual 18650 parallel mod and both batteries, which by the way have to be the same, if they're you got two 30 amp batteries in there, let's say Sony VTC5As. Those are 30 amp batteries, so you have two of them in there. Instead of 30 amps to play with, you actually in reality have 60 amps to play with, because it draws off both batteries evenly. But opposite side of the coin of that is series. So series is basically you're stacking the voltage. So instead of the batteries being parallel and both positives running up and basically draining at the same time, series, one battery is flipped. So the power goes down, around, and up the other one, and you're stacking the voltage. So instead of 4.2 volt limit, you're now getting double the voltage at 8.4, which double the power, which usually means more vapor, more flavor, more heat, as a lot of people would say. But there are some downsides to it. Yes, you're getting more power, and you're able to get more cloud quicker, but you are limited as far as amperage. Whereas parallel, you double the amperage of a 2 battery mod, In series, you're limited to the amperage of one battery. So two 30 amp batteries in a series mod would only give you 30 amps. That is where things, it kind of, that's where it comes down to what are you looking for. Do you want to take longer poles but have more battery life, or do you want that quicker, do you want to take a 4 to 5 second draw on parallel because of the lower power, but you have better battery life, or do you want that quicker, like 1 to maybe 3 second pull off a series, but you don't have as much battery life because you're pulling double the power? You kind of see where things kind of balance out each other in a way if you think about it. Mechs, tube mechs, runs on the same concept as the unregulated box mods, just in tube form. However, though, there are differences. Most mech mods that are made nowadays are what's considered hybrid. Now, back in like the 13, 14, and 15 era of vaping, mech mods had regular 510s like all regulated mods have now. So you were able to use sub-ohm tanks on them. But now they are hybrids. They basically took the 510 pin out, and they basically it's direct contact with the battery as far as your atomizer. So in hybrids, you do not put a sub-ohm tank on those sons of bitches. You don't, because most sub-ohm tanks runs floating 510s. Ergo, you may run the risk of causing a hard short within the tube itself. So how a mech though works, you have RDA on there on the top, and you have obviously the battery pointing upward at positive. That's how I put them in anyway. And at the bottom you have your fire button. And basically when you go to push that fire button, there's a contact in the button assembly that pushes up against the battery and pushes the battery up against the atomizer, completing the connection and firing the coils. For example, we got this guy. This is a stacked 2700 mech mod. 2700s, I got the lift cores in here, Mooch approved again. I got a .31 build in here. Battery's a little bit drained, but just like with the parallel versus series box mods, most mechs are single battery, which is usually 4.2 volts. However, though, only running on one battery, you're limited to that battery's amperage. Stacked, you're the same thing. You're just doubling the voltage, but you are limited to the amperage of one battery. Now we go into the more crazier, more intense side of things, which are lipos, which is more of my field of expertise when it comes to vaping because I love power. Lipos, lithium polymer batteries, which are usually batteries you find in RC cars. Those things are crazy powerful. Now, when you look at a lipo, it'll say like 2S, 3S, 4S, 5S. What that is that it is telling you the cells that are in that pack. I run 4S's, so I have 4 cell lipo packs. And I usually run the Turnigy 2200 mAh lipo packs. Now you may think, well, that doesn't sound like a whole lot. You're looking at 2200 mAh per cell, and there's 4 cells. So the battery life doesn't seem as bad as it sounds. But a 4S lipo, so you think each cell has 4.2 volts fully charged, and they're wired in series. You got 16.8 volts there. So that's where lipos become very, very. You have to be very. You have to have your knowledge in lipos in order to run them safely. And when it comes to lipos, it's a whole different animal because you're running at such higher voltage. You're not at this point. You're not caring about the wattage. You're caring about the voltage output. Now, a lot of lipo mods out there are actually either ran by a chip, like a regulated mod, or a lot of times they're run on PWMs, pulse width modulation. So basically, PWM in retrospect controls the amount of voltage going to the addy. So from what I've read and what I've learned over my time of running lipos, the power going from the battery to the PWM module inside of the box, that path is always at full power, 16.8 volts or whatever power level that the battery is at as far as its charge. But as the power goes through the PWM, it cycles on and off pulses, creating whatever voltage that you have the dial on the outside set to. That's what goes to your atomizer. So sorry, I get zoned out there. I'm tired here. But that's really, lipos are very, for more than, I rather vape on a stacked mech than, well, I do like vaping on lipos, but I say that a stacked tube is safer than a lipo, to be honest with you. Definitely do your when it comes to unregulated stuff, you always have to do your research, always know your Ohm's law, always know your battery safety, which will be in the next video. Next video is going to be about battery safety, where I'm going to dive down to the table, show you batteries, and just kind of explain Ohm's law to you. And so episode 2, which I think I'll do on Monday actually. So this video would be rather short because it's just more explaining the different levels of vaping out there on the market. So guys, that's really it for this video right now. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. And as always, until next time, Monster Man Vapes, signing off.